All right, so we're diving into Zero Day this time.
Okay.
That new Netflix series everyone's been talking about.
Right.
With Robert De Niro playing a former president who gets pulled into this whole cyber attack thing. I mean, you sent over a ton of reviews.
I did.
And it seems like people are either absolutely loving this show or kind of finding it a bit underwhelming.
You're right.
So it's worth watching.
A real mixed bag.
Is Zero Day worth adding to the watch list?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to try to figure out.
That's the mission.
So
it's really interesting because on paper, Zero Day has like everything going for it.
Right.
You've got a plot that feels ripped from the headlines, an amazing cast.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's practically designed to be a hit.
De Niro is like a president battling a cyber attack.
Right.
I mean, that's got to be good, right?
Exactly.
But some of these sources are saying
it
doesn't quite hit the mark.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
So we're going to unpack those contrasting opinions.
Okay.
Dig into the show's strengths, the weaknesses, and hopefully by the end you'll know if Zero Day is for you.
I like it. Let's start with the cyber attack itself.
Okay.
What kind of havoc does the show depict?
Well, they really don't hold back.
Okay.
You see critical infrastructure failures,
okay,
communication breakdowns, the financial system's grinding to a halt.
Whoa.
It's a pretty bleak picture of what could happen if our digital world was really compromised.
So they're not shying away from the real-world consequences here?
No, not at all.
It's not just like a Hollywood montage with green code flashing everywhere.
Right.
Okay, so it's got some realism?
Yeah, and that's where its relevance comes in, you know? I mean, we live in this hyper-connected world.
We do.
And the threat of cyber warfare is very real.
Yeah.
So Zero Day really taps into that underlying anxiety that a lot of us feel.
Right.
It forces us to confront how vulnerable our systems really are.
So it's not just entertainment then?
Right.
It's almost like a cautionary tale.
Yeah, I think that's what elevates it beyond your typical thriller.
Interesting.
It asks us to consider what we'd lose if we lost our technology and how fragile our way of life really is.
Okay, so it's got brains and brawn.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the muscle.
Okay.
The cast.
All right.
De Niro, Bassett, Plemons.
Huge names.
Did the sources think they lived up to the hype?
I think the general consensus is that the acting is fantastic.
Okay.
De Niro, as always, brings his intensity to the role of this former president, George Mullen.
I mean, one source even said he commands the screen with a quiet power.
Yes.
Which I feel like is just De Niro.
That's De Niro
to a T.
Absolutely.
But
this is where it gets a little tricky. The acting is amazing, but the characters themselves get a more mixed reception.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So you're saying we have great acting, but the characters might be weak?
It's a common criticism.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Some sources say that while the actors are giving it their all, the characters themselves lack a certain depth.
Okay.
And their motivations aren't always super clear. It's almost as if they tried to tackle these really complex themes.
Yeah.
They forgot to actually develop the characters.
So it's like they built this amazing world.
Exactly.
This high-stakes scenario.
Yeah.
But they didn't really think about who's living in it.
That's a great way to put it.
It's interesting.
And that's something you listening might want to consider.
Okay.
If you're someone who really needs to connect with characters on an emotional level, Zero Day might leave you feeling a little detached.
Okay, so we've got a really interesting premise.
Yeah.
An amazing cast.
Right.
But maybe some underdeveloped characters.
Potentially.
What about the tone and the pacing?
Yes. So this is where the reviews really start to diverge.
Okay.
Some viewers found the show to be a little slow.
Okay.
Like a slow burn. Maybe a little too slow at times.
Right.
And they felt that it got weighed down by all the dialogue, and it lacked that urgency you might expect from a thriller about a cyber attack.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that being an issue for some people.
Especially with so many fast-paced shows out there these days.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have other viewers who actually appreciated that slower pace. They argued it gave the show space to breathe, allowed for a deeper exploration of the themes and the psychology of the characters. They saw it as a strength.
Interesting. So the pacing is either a deal breaker or a deal maker.
It depends.
Depending on what you like.
On your preference, exactly.
Okay.
If you want a show that keeps you on the edge of your seat with constant twists and turns, Zero Day might not be the best fit.
Okay.
But if you enjoy shows that unfold slowly and methodically and invite you to think about the bigger picture, then you might actually find the pacing quite compelling.
Okay, so we've got a show that's intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
Timely. Incredible acting.
For sure.
But it might not be for everyone.
Right.
And that pacing seems to be a key factor in that.
Definitely.
Okay.
And this leads into another point of contention, the plot itself.
Okay.
Is it a tangled web of intrigue or just a tangled mess?
Ooh, we'll have to delve into that next. So we've established that Zero Day is a show that really makes you think.
Definitely.
But what about the plot itself?
Okay.
Does it keep you engaged, or does it get kind of lost in all the complexity?
It's interesting because the sources really had different opinions on this.
Okay.
Some viewers absolutely loved the plot. They called it like a masterclass in suspense and a really thought-provoking look at power and technology.
That sounds promising.
Yeah.
But I know some people found it confusing.
Right. And some of the critics said there's just too much going on. You have multiple storylines, a huge cast of characters, twists and turns, and they felt like it was hard to keep track of everything.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
0 Days definitely has a lot going on, and it's not afraid of ambiguity.
Right.
It leaves you with questions, and it makes you think.
I like it, Dad.
Yeah.
I like a show that doesn't give you all the answers.
Right.
But I can see how that might not be for everyone.
Exactly. And this is where you, the listener, have to ask yourself,
Yeah.
What kind of show are you looking for? If you enjoy shows that challenge you, keep you guessing, and maybe even spark some debate, then 0 Day might be perfect for you. But if you prefer those more straightforward narratives, prefer things wrapped up neatly at the end, it might not be your cup of tea.
Okay, so the plot is complex.
It is.
Maybe even a little polarizing.
Yeah.
But we haven't really talked about the characters themselves.
Right.
Did any of the sources get into the individual performances?
They did, and it's interesting because, as we mentioned before, the acting is great, but there are some reservations about the characters.
Right. That whole great actors, potentially flat characters thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so what do they say?
Well, let's start with De Niro's character, former President George Mullen.
Right.
The sources describe him as this really complex figure, kind of enigmatic, haunted by decisions he's made in the past, clearly brilliant, but also flawed. You really get the sense that he feels responsible for this whole crisis.
That sounds like a classic De Niro role.
It does.
Like brooding, intense, morally ambiguous.
Yeah.
Did they think he pulled it off?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They said he brought this weight to the role, this gravitas that few other actors could.
Yeah.
But some critics did say that the character, while compelling, felt a little underdeveloped. Like they wanted to know more about his backstory, his motivations, like what was really going on in his head.
I get that. Like they had this opportunity to really dig deep into this character, but they didn't quite go all the way.
What about Angela Bassett's character?
Oh, yeah, she's playing the current president.
Yes, President Susan Maya.
Okay.
And from what I've read, Bassett gives a fantastic performance as this woman who's suddenly thrust into this impossible situation.
Yeah.
She's decisive, intelligent.
Okay.
Really carries the weight of the nation on her shoulder.
You think the current president would be like a central figure?
Right.
In a show about a cyber attack on America?
Yeah, that's actually one of the criticisms.
Really?
Some viewers felt her character was kind of sidelined.
Interesting.
They wanted to see more of her leadership, how she makes decisions, her own personal struggles during this crisis.
So another potentially great character that didn't get enough attention.
Yeah, and what about Jesse Plemons?
Oh, he's always so good.
He is, and he plays a pretty crucial role in 0 Day.
Okay.
He's Roger Carlson, a close advisor to President Mullen.
Okay.
And he's described as this morally conflicted guy.
Okay.
Someone who's trying to do this right, but in a system that's becoming increasingly corrupt.
That sounds like a really interesting character.
Yeah, the sources praised his performance, saying he brought a lot of nuance to the role. But again, some felt like his storyline could have been explored further. They wanted to understand his motivations better and his relationship with Mullen.
So it seems like a recurring theme.
Yeah.
Great acting, but maybe they missed some opportunities to really develop the characters.
Right, and that's something the listener should think about.
Okay.
If you're looking for a show with really deep characters, 0 Day might not be it.
Okay.
But if you're more interested in the suspense, the ideas, the political maneuvering, then it might not bother you as much.
So it's a trade-off.
It is.
What else should our listener know?
Let's talk about the look of the show.
Okay.
The visual style, the atmosphere.
Okay. Did the sources mention anything about that?
They did, and it seems like the cinematography was another dividing factor.
Really?
Yeah, some viewers found it really striking, while others thought it was a bit too bleak.
Interesting.
A lot of reviewers mentioned the dark, grainy visuals, the muted colors, this overall sense of unease, and some felt like that style perfectly reflected the themes of the show, like paranoia and uncertainty, while others just found it too oppressive.
It sounds like they were going for a realistic feel.
Yeah.
almost documentary-like.
Exactly.
Did they mention any scenes that stood out?
One source mentioned a scene where President Maya is addressing the nation after the attack, and they said it was brilliantly done.
Okay.
Using silence and shadow, lots of close-ups on her face to show her inner turmoil.
Yeah.
And then the background is completely dark.
Wow.
Symbolizing the uncertainty of the situation.
That's really cool.
It is a great example of how visuals can enhance the story.
But I can also see how that might not be everyone's cup of tea.
Right. Some people prefer things a bit brighter.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's so great about art. It's all subjective.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
So complex characters, complex plot, complex visual style.
Definitely.
Is there anything about Zero Day that's not complex?
Well, one thing that everyone seemed to agree on was its timeliness.
Okay.
The sources all highlighted how Zero Day reflects our anxieties about things like cyber warfare, misinformation, the erosion of our privacy.
That's a big one these days.
It is.
And I think that's why people are talking about the show.
Yeah.
It's not just entertainment.
Right.
It's reflecting our reality back at us.
Exactly.
And sometimes that's not always pretty.
It can be uncomfortable.
But it makes for good TV.
It does.
So it's entertaining, it's timely, and it makes us think.
For sure.
But how does it all come together?
That's what we'll look at in the final part of a deep dive.
Ooh, I like it.
We'll weigh the pros and cons, consider all the different perspectives, and hopefully help you decide if Zero Day is worth your time.
Sounds good. I'm ready. All right, so we've talked about the premise, the cast, the pacing. That's cinematography.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack.
Definitely.
But the big question is, is Zero Day actually worth watching?
You know, based on everything we've discussed, and considering all those different perspectives from the sources, I think I'd say it's a qualified yes.
Qualified? Okay, what are the qualifications?
Well, Zero Day is not like those typical thrillers, you know? It's not something you just have on in the background. It really demands your attention. It makes you think. And it might even leave you feeling a little unsettled.
Interesting.
It's not about easy answers or clear resolutions. It's really about grappling with those complex issues and exploring those gray areas of morality and power.
So it's not a show you can just watch while scrolling on your phone.
No, you got to be engaged.
You really got to be in the right headspace for it.
Yeah, it rewards active viewing for sure.
Okay.
You know, if you go in expecting explosions and car chases, you're going to be disappointed.
Okay.
But if you want a show that challenges you intellectually and emotionally, then Zero Day could be a great fit.
You know, you've mentioned a few times how the show tackles these big themes.
Right.
Cyber warfare, misinformation, the erosion of civil liberties. Do you think that's what makes it worth watching?
I think it's definitely a big part of its appeal.
Okay.
Speaking to our anxieties, the things we're all facing in this digital age. And it's holding up a mirror to society.
Interesting.
Making us confront some uncomfortable truths.
So it's more than just entertainment then?
Right. It's starting conversations. Okay. Making us think critically about the world around us.
Which is important.
Yeah, and I think that's why, despite some of its flaws, Zero Day has the potential to be a really impactful show.
Okay.
It's not just about the plot or the characters.
Right.
It's about those bigger questions.
Yeah.
The ones about the future of our society.
So for our listener who's still on the fence, what's like the one thing to keep in mind?
I'd say that Zero Day is a show that stays with you.
Okay.
Even if you don't love every single part of it, it's going to spark some conversations and leave you thinking about the world we live in.
I like that.
It's an experience.
It's not about escaping reality.
No.
It's about engaging with it.
Exactly.
Which is what good art should do, right?
I think so. It should challenge us, provoke us.
Yeah.
Make us see things differently.
I agree. So I think we can say that Zero Day is complex.
It is.
Thought-provoking. Has a lot to offer.
For sure.
But it might not be for everyone.
Right.
You got to be ready to pay attention.
Definitely.
Be patient. And maybe even be okay with not getting all the answers.
Exactly.
So to our listener, if you're looking for something timely, intelligent, something that dives into that dark side of the digital world, then Zero Day might be just the show for you.
It could be.
But if you're looking for something light,
yeah,
something to just have on in the background,
right,
you might want to skip this one.
Probably.
The choice, as always, is yours.
It is.
And we hope this deep dive has given you all the info you need to make that choice. That's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Helping you find those hidden gems
exactly
in the vast sea of content.
That are actually worth your time.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep